Susan Marrow was sitting in her room staring at the ceiling when she heard a knock on the door. She got up and opened it to find Harper Langley standing there with a mischievous grin on her face. "Hey, what's up?" Harper asked. "I just wanted to come by and see if you needed any help." Susan smiled back at her. "Thanks for the offer, but I think we're good right now," she said. "But hey, do you want to join us for a little adventure later? Kathy and Terrence are coming over too." Harper raised an eyebrow. "An adventure? What kind of adventure?" Susan shrugged her shoulders. "I don't know, just something fun and exciting," she said. "We could go on a road trip or do some extreme sports or something like that." Harper thought for a moment before nodding her head. "Okay, count me in," she said. "But I'm bringing my own outfit." Susan laughed. "I can't wait to see what you come up with," she said. A few hours later, the four friends were sitting on a bench at the park, discussing their plans for the adventure. Kathy was bouncing up and down with excitement, while Terrence sat quietly, staring off into space. "So, where are we going?" Susan asked. Harper shrugged her shoulders. "I don't know," she said. "Maybe we should just go wherever the wind takes us." Kathy nodded in agreement. "Yeah, let's be spontaneous," she exclaimed. Terrence finally spoke up. "Guys, I have an idea," he said. "We could go to that abandoned amusement park on the outskirts of town." Susan raised her eyebrows. "An abandoned amusement park? Are you sure about that?" Terrence nodded confidently. "Yeah, it's supposed to be really creepy and spooky," he said. "But I think it would make for a great adventure." The friends exchanged glances before nodding in agreement. They decided to head out to the abandoned amusement park that night. As they walked through the dark, empty streets of the park, Susan couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. The rusted roller coasters and dilapidated buildings loomed ominously in the darkness, casting eerie shadows on the ground. Harper, however, seemed unfazed by the atmosphere. She was dressed in a bright neon outfit that glowed in the dark, making her stand out like a beacon in the darkness. "Guys, come on," she said, gesturing for them to follow her. "There's something really cool over here." Susan and Kathy followed Harper as she led them deeper into the park. They eventually came across an old Ferris wheel that had been abandoned for years. The paint was chipped and the rust had taken its toll, but it still looked like a fun ride. "Let's go up to the top," Harper said, climbing onto one of the cars. "I bet we can see the whole town from here." Susan and Kathy climbed onto the car next to Harper, laughing as they rose higher and higher into the sky. They could see the lights of the town twinkling below them, and for a moment, it felt like they were on top of the world. But their joy was short-lived. As they reached the top, they heard a strange noise coming from one of the other cars. It sounded like someone was trapped inside. "Guys, we have to help them!" Susan exclaimed, jumping off the Ferris wheel and running towards the sound. Harper and Kathy followed suit, their hearts racing with excitement. They found the trapped person to be an old man, dressed in tattered clothes and looking lost. Susan quickly knelt down next to him and asked if he was okay. The old man nodded slowly, but his eyes were filled with fear. "We have to get you out of here," Susan said, helping the old man to his feet. "Come on, let's go." Harper grabbed onto the old man's arm and led him through the dark, empty streets of the park. Kathy followed close behind, making sure that they didn't lose sight of their new friend. Terrence walked silently beside them, watching as the group made their way back to the entrance of the park. As they emerged from the darkness of the park and into the light of the moonlit night, Susan turned to the old man. "Where do you live?" she asked. The old man looked around nervously before pointing towards a small house on the edge of town. "That's my home," he said. but I don't think it's safe for me to go back there alone. Susan nodded in agreement. We'll make sure you get home safely, she said. Come on, let's go. The group walked together towards the old man's house, with Susan leading the way. Harper and Kathy chatted excitedly about their adventure, while Terrence remained silent, watching as they made their way through the dark streets of town. As they approached the old man's house, Susan could see that it was an old, dilapidated building that had been abandoned for years. The windows were boarded up, and the paint was peeling off the walls. This place looks pretty creepy, Harper said, shuddering. I don't know if I want to go in there. Susan smiled reassuringly. Don't worry, we'll make sure you get home safely, she said. Come on, let's go inside. The group carefully made their way up the stairs of the old house, with Susan leading the way. They eventually reached the old man's bedroom, where they found him lying in bed, looking exhausted and scared. Are you okay? Susan asked, kneeling down next to him. Do you need anything? The old man nodded slowly. I just want to go to sleep, he said. Can you help me get into my own bed? Susan smiled warmly at the old man and helped him up from his makeshift bed on the floor. They carefully made their way down the stairs and out of the house, with Susan leading the way. As they walked back towards their own homes, Susan couldn't help but feel a sense of pride in her friends for coming to the old man's aid. Harper and Kathy were already talking about how much fun they had on their adventure, while Terrence remained silent, watching as they made their way through the dark streets of town. Susan smiled to herself as she walked home that night, feeling grateful for her friends and the sense of adventure that they brought into her life. She knew that no matter what challenges came their way, they would always be there for each other, ready to take on whatever the world had in store for them.